Were you able to get outside?
I think it's just the files are already loaded into my Outlook.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a discussion with Gene for some time now, because there is a public network, but every time I've tried to use it, we have 4. Can't hear him yet.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order and make a announcement. I guess for those watching for a while, you'll be able to see us. And at 7 o'clock, I believe there's a changeover on the city schedule, so you'll be able to see a special city commission meeting tonight. But we'll still be streaming, or still be on the meeting. Anyway, a reminder to the people in the conference room, in the actual chambers, that when you want to speak, make sure you turn the microphone on. Otherwise, it's really hard to hear. From the last meeting, I think that was one of my main problems. I thought it was 45 years of loud rock and roll, but it's actually the mics weren't on. So, all right. Meeting's called to order. If I could ask staff to call a roll call.
Okay, Member Wheeler?
Here, and if I could ask the IT folks to turn the volume up just a wee bit in here, please.
Member Jacobson?
Here.
Member Miles? Member Sperlingwood? Member Rockwell?
Here.
Member Davis? Member Crow?
He did a hand motion.
And Member Fultz?
Here.
And Chair Porter?
Here.
Okay, so we have Member Miles, Sperlingwood, and Davis absent.
All right. And do I hear a motion to adopt the consent items?
Mr. Chair, I so move.
So moved.
Thank you. I'd also like to comment on that motion that we had a number of items that were added as backups in the last meeting because I didn't want to drag the meeting out for hours, just so that UAB members know that backup material is in there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we have a motion to move that and a second. Any citizen comment on that vote?
Mr. Chair, there's nobody on the line right now. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. If I could have staff do a roll call on the vote to adopt the consent items.
Okay, Member Wheeler?
Aye.
Member Jacobson?
Aye.
Member Miles is absent. Member Rockwell?
Aye.
Member Crow,
Aye.
and Member Foltz,
Aye.
and Chair Porter.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously.
All right. So now we come up to adopting the agenda. And I'd like to add the comment that rather than have staff wait around to go through the whole budget, or not budget, the whole item list, that we take care of their item first. So we can do that ahead of the old business.
So moved.
All right. So other than that, do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda?
Second and. Aye.
All right. And a motion for that. Now, I guess we have any comments from the public on that?
Wasn't expecting you to ask. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
No, there's
That's
nobody
all
on the
right.
line. Nobody's
All
on the
right.
line right now. You're good to
All
go.
right. All right. So staff could call the roll on adopting the agenda.
Okay, and just to clarify, we are voting to adopt the agenda with the modification of moving the old business to the end. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, getting the water and wastewater structure stuff moved up to the front.
Okay. Member Wheeler,
Aye.
Member Jacobson,
Aye.
Member Miles is absent, Member Rockwell,
Aye.
Member Crow,
Member Crow? Right, okay. Hollered again, yeah.
okay, Member Foltz,
Aye.
and Chair Porter.
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously.
All right, so that brings us up to the next item on the list. I think we still have state of utility, but we didn't have any documents this week on that, but did anybody from that arena want to say any summary comments about that?
Chair Porter, as Tom Brown,
Yeah,
operating officer for GRU. Robin did send out a report earlier. I thought she had distributed it.
it didn't get assimilated in time to make it to the docket, so
Okay.
just,
I can give you a quick summary. You know, February was kind of a plain vanilla month, except for that little cold snap we had the same time Texas was going through their debacle, for lack of a better word.
that's a good one.
I have to tell you, you know, Florida, in some respects, wasn't in that much better shape because, you know, Florida is, I think, 87% dependent on natural gas. And actually buying gas during those couple of days for us was very difficult. In fact, we didn't really have any. We couldn't buy it. Had transport, we couldn't actually get the gas into the lines to get it to us. So there were several days where we were actually running on 100% coal and biomass. And if it wasn't for those two units, you know, Gainesville would have been in trouble. I mean, Kelly was down for scheduled outage. It's still down as we speak, but it wouldn't have mattered. If it was up and running, we wouldn't have been able to get fuel for it. And, you know, you get an allocation of gas, and if you go over it, you pay triple the market rates for it. So we did actually go over our allotments, I think 2 days. I think the total damages, Dino's on here, I think it was close to $100,000 in penalties that we paid, and that was just to supply gas to our heating customers and the SEC, the hospital. So there's quite a penalty if you go over that. But we were actually able to sell excess megawatts into the grid from Deer Haven 2, tune of about 100 megawatts for most of those days, and I think we may net it out, if I remember correctly, close to $900,000. So between the two, about $800,000 upside for us because we had fuel diversity. So sometimes that's really important for us.
Excuse me, Tom, what happened in the rest of the state with the rest of utilities that don't have any backups like we do? That's all natural gas.
I'm not sure I really can speak to that.
Yeah.
I think the case of Duke and FPL, they own a lot of the transport um, with Sable Trail and so on. So they're positioned a little bit different.
Hmm.
They,
Okay. All right.
I mean, you can get firm gas year round, but then it's a lot more expensive than buying it off the market. So we have a certain number of therms. I think it's in the neighborhood of 25,000 therms a day that we can nominate and get typically.
Mhm.
That is firm. But beyond that, we basically take it off the market because when the prices go high, we can revert to other fuels. So we can utilize that strategy and minimize the cost for our
Okay.
customers.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, please. That's what we're here for, right? Um, so project-wise, Deer Haven 2, the transition to natural gas is going along well. It's on schedule. Kelly, Unit 8, the turbine generator transfer is a little bit behind. We're estimating right now about 4 weeks behind on the turbine itself, the generator, and that was basically due to removing the old generator. We got into the project and discovered the floor rating in the existing building wasn't adequate to be able to just roll the old generator out over it. So we've been in the process of doing the engineering analysis and getting the shoring in place to bolster that up. So it's not an issue. Expect to have the shoring in place later this week. And actually the turbine schedule, the old turbine generator stators is scheduled to come out next week. And about 4 or 5 days after that, the new generator and turbine should be installed. But right now, it looks like from original schedule, we're about 4 weeks behind. We're still projecting late May for that to come on board. CT4, that major inspection is going along well and should come back pretty much on schedule. The other thing I think is worth noting is on the solar project. I think everybody's seen in the news where there's some concern over the siting, where we're looking to put the site. And Origis is taking that back to the city or the county zoning commission mid this month, and then following that to the county commission for hopefully for their approval. And they've also done some extra outreach to the local community in the meantime. So with that, I guess the other thing worth mentioning, Tony's obviously on board here. He's going to be talking to you about some proposed changes in our rate structure for water going forward. With that, I really don't have anything notable to say about the month. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to address them.
Whatever will come up when the reports finally follow through and we get a chance to look at the paper, we might have questions. But again, thanks, Tom, for your summary of that and details on the changeover of equipment and the situation with the solar project. Thanks. Any other members have any questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I commend staff for being able to respond to that cold snap. I know it was difficult, and I think that really highlights the virtue and value of local renewable resources that we don't have to purchase somewhere else. So I was very pleased to hear how well y'all responded to that. And I also like to put a bug in the ears of staff and everybody here that maybe we should start anticipating what other plan B there may be if the Origis isn't approved. What other sites, where do we go next? So maybe we could discuss it at our next workshop, our next meeting, so that we're prepared and not, put it off. Thank you.
Mayor Porter, could I respond to that briefly?
Yeah, please, absolutely.
You're absolutely right, member. In fact, tomorrow we're having about a 5-hour seminar with the FRCC over lessons learned from ERCOT, and everybody's concerned about it. We recognize how critical the gas infrastructure and gas delivery is to the state of Florida and how dependent Florida is on that gas. So, winterization is a big issue that everybody's addressing, that we need to take a second look at that on our winterization programs and how we prepare our units for cold weather, and also, the reliability and supply of the natural gas. So it's very much on everybody's mind in the state, and there will be some things come out from that. Be glad to report to the UAB later on that, on what transpires from those lessons.
Hey, Tom, I think what Member Wheeler was talking about was alternative plans on solar, not gas.
But I like the gas part stuff too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For the
But yeah,
price of one.
yeah.
Yeah, we're, quite frankly, we're not, we have to be careful. And then we have a contract with a Regis, and, you know, we have to let that contract play out, if you will. And we certainly don't want to start going down other paths while they're engaged in trying to get this site that fits the profile that they bid on so succinctly. Although we hear what you're saying, we have to tread somewhat lightly and be careful of the legalities associated with this.
I understand, and I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse either. I think it's a great site. I think they've really done their job well, and I'm supporting it, rooting for it 1,000%. I just want to kind of look ahead and be prepared if as a contingency, and that the UAB be involved in that.
You know,
Yeah, well, I would also say and you know, Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, or he can tell me to shut up. But there was a lot of work that went into, you know, the various options to begin with, and they haven't changed. So there are other options. Unfortunately, those options come with, you know, uneconomic consequences.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
There were some comments that General Manager Volarski made about the siting up by Deer Haven, and I didn't understand it. So maybe sometime an engineer can explain it to his attorney. Something about we can't wheel the power over the west side of town versus east side. But it's something to do with single.
Yeah, that's a much better. That's much better for Tom to answer. I can probably get you and I wrapped around the axle on that, where Tom can probably figure it out and explain it to you much more easily.
It'll have to be in simple terms.
For me too.
And we can actually do that, and it doesn't take that long. The short story, Member Wheeler, is that on the east side of town, we have dual transmission lines that run around the city. And on the west side, there's just a single loop that goes from Deer Haven down to the Parker substation. So in periods where if we had a problem with that single line, we would now have to wheel 100% of our power down the east side around to the west side of the city. And due to the size of the lines would overheat under high load conditions. Not all the time, but under high load conditions. But we've had 2 or 3 instances already where we've reached close to the limits, the transmission limits of that system.
I understand. I'm getting the cart ahead of the horse. I'm just trying to put it all in the big picture together in my head. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Any other comments on the state of the utility? Yeah, go ahead, Member Crow.
I'd just like to say thank you. There were a number of acronyms and abbreviations and things in that initial report format that I really didn't know, and staff has really elucidated a lot of those, and I just wanted to say thanks a lot for that.
All right. The most important pages in all the NASA documents I dug through in my previous career was the beginning pages that had a list of all the acronyms. Yeah. All right. I think that brings us up to our new business, and that would be the water and wastewater rate structure modification presentation.
Hello.
Tony, good to see you. It's been a while.
Yes, it has. Good to see you all. So hey, Chair Porter and members, my name is Tony Cunningham. I am the Water and Wastewater Officer for GRU. And what I'm going to do is attempt to share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Robin's gonna have to turn that on for you, Tony, I think. And Robin's on mute, so we can't hear her.
Yeah.
Okay, it's Working now.
All right.
All right. All right. So um, well, there we go. So in operating the water and wastewater system, one of the things that's part of my responsibility as officer is also making sure we have rate structures that are good and make sense and collect the right amount of revenue and also meet the goals of our city commission. And so periodically, in order to ensure that we are doing all of that and meeting those goals, we review the rate structures. We work with our budget, finance, and accounting office and our rates and forecasting group and look at them typically on an annual basis. And so we've been working on a few different modifications of the rate structures that I'd like to go over tonight with you all. So the goal really of what we're trying to accomplish is simplify the rate structure. Sometimes you can get into very detailed structures that might be more precise or might make sense mathematically, but are difficult for customers to understand or interpret. So we try to make sure we have rates that are understandable. We look at consistency with the industry and other utilities. You oftentimes compare rates with other utilities, and so having similar rate structures allows you to do that on an apples-to-apples basis. A goal of the city commission and the utility has been for many years and will continue to be to promote water conservation. So we do have a limited water supply in the Florida Aquifer in North Florida. And so our long-term strategy for providing water to a community includes a pretty intense look at water conservation. And then finally, obviously, there has to be financial sustainability. So rates that collect the right amount of revenue to be able to operate and maintain the system in perpetuity. With that being said, I'm going to talk about three different water rates or structures that we're looking at modifying. These are the three, and then I'm going to go into detail on each of them. But the three in water is one, we have a tiered rate structure. And I am recommending lowering the third tier down to a lower usage rate so that customers will then start to get into the third tier at greater than 12,000 gallons a month. And then, so that's one. Another one is City of Alachua. So we have just a few wholesale customers that are in the City of Alachua. We have a contractual relationship with them to sell them that water. We have fallen a little bit behind on updating their rate. And so I'm recommending updating the rate of that wholesale to $2.67. And then the last one in water, on the water side, is the second tier of our residential water rate is currently $3.77. I'm recommending that we adjust it to $3.87. And the primary driver for that is $3.87 is what we consider our cost of service. It is what our general service rate is, which is commercial and some other rates. And so making it consistent with that cost of service. So when you get in the second tier of water, you are at the cost of service rate. So I'm going to talk a little detail about each of those. First, the adjustment of the third tier. So right now, if you look on the left hand, and I guess y'all can see my cursor too. If you look on the right hand side of the screen, you have the rate, which is $2.47 is the first tier. And that tier goes from 0 to 4,000 gallons per month. We collect about 58% of our revenue in that tier. The second tier is currently $3.77. It goes from 5,000 to 16,000 gallons per month. And we currently collect about 29% of our revenue in that tier. And then the last tier is $6.04, and that's greater than 16,000 gallons. So as I stated earlier, what my proposal is, what we're proposing as GRU is to basically change that third tier so the cutoff is now at 12,000 gallons. The logic behind this is the third tier really is for more non-discretional or discretional water use. and primarily if you think of that as outdoor use, washing your car or watering your grass, things of that nature, and that indoor uses would typically be well below that 12,000 gallon per month, and that when you get above that, that's more of a discretionary use of water. And the other reason is it really then promotes water conservation. So it sends a price signal a little bit sooner in monthly water use, and it's really encouraging customers to use less water. That also then supports really our long-term water supply goals, is to continue to drive down the per capita water use so that our allocation of water can go longer and longer into the future. The one challenge that could occur is as people get higher and higher price signals, they may consider going to a well. And so that is a challenge for lowering that. I am going to move to the next one unless you all want to entertain questions now, or if you want me to move on, I can move on. I will move on. The next two, as I stated earlier, one is the City of Alachua water rate. So the recommendation is to adjust it to $2.67. It's currently at only $1.62 per 1,000 gallons a month. The reason we are moving it to $2.67 is really that's significantly closer to the true cost of service, and is consistent with the City of Alachua's current commercial and second tier residential water rate of $2.67 that they charge their customers. As a wholesale customer, they are doing their own distribution, water distribution. We're only providing it through transmission to their customers. So that is why it's still less than our cost of service, because we're not providing that distribution cost. One thing I will say about making this adjustment, it is not a large amount of revenue. We only have a few customers, which is part of the reason I think it got behind a little bit. But just for equitability, I think it's important that we're charging them more close to what our existing customers are paying. And then the last adjustment, as I said earlier, really is just that second tier residential water rate. It being a little bit different than slightly below our cost of service or slightly below the general service rate, and making that consistent with that general service rate and the cost of service. Also, it is sending just a very, very little signal, again, of water conservation as you're moving into that second tier rate. So again, I'll pause. I'm going to move on to wastewater adjustments if nobody has any questions. All right. On the wastewater side, we include reclaimed water in the wastewater system. So it's both wastewater and there's a reclaimed water rate I'm going to discuss. The three adjustments that we're recommending in the wastewater system is one, we currently have for a commercial wastewater customer, they're charged 95% of their water use. And historically, that 95% multiplier has been there to account for potential outdoor use or other use of water that doesn't return to our system. But because almost all commercial customers have irrigation meters if they do have outdoor use, we are recommending we move to 100% of their water use should be charged on the wastewater side. And so that is very consistent with other utilities in the industry. The next one is going to take a little more explanation, so I will do it in a minute. I won't do it here, but it's we currently have a winter max calculation to calculate our wastewater for residential customers. And the recommendation is to replace that with one-to-one use with your water with a cap of 12,000 gallons. And again, I'll get into more detail on that in a second. It's a little more complicated. And then the last recommendation is reclaimed water. We currently charge $1 per 1,000 gallons. It's to increase that by 23.5 cents to $1.23.5. The reason we're picking that precise number is because we're trying to index it to our potable rate. and move it to 50% of the potable rate. Again, reclaim, and I'll talk a little bit more about reclaimed water and that and why we have that adjustment. So the commercial water rate, as I said, currently there's a 95% multiplier. We're recommending to eliminate that. That is bring more consistency with most other utilities, and it's more representative of their actual use. And so that is why we're recommending that adjustment. So winter max. So I will go into a brief explanation for those that don't know. So wastewater, and it's the same with the commercial one. Wastewater, you don't have meters on your wastewater system, and so what you're trying to do is set a rate that you're trying to predict the wastewater that's returning based on the water that a customer is using. And so in residential, the way that we have done that historically is through what's called a winter maximum calculation. And what happens is we look at folks' water bills and the residential folks' water bills in December and January, for their usage in December and January. And we look at the higher of those 2 months, and then that establishes a cap for their wastewater all year long. And the logic there is that you're not doing as much outdoor use during those months, and that it's more representative of your wastewater returning to the system. So it is a good rate. It is a good way to set up and estimate wastewater. One of the big challenges with it is that it is not consistent with other utilities and the rate that other utilities have, how they set up their rate structure. And so one of the things we're really trying to look for is consistency with other utilities. It also, by making the change to actual water use as your wastewater bill, it is going to continue to promote water conservation. And so as customers are getting that price signal, they are going to continue to be encouraged to use less water, which will reduce not only their water bill, but also their wastewater bill. It also simplifies the billing. So, there's a lot of confusion about winter max and when the months are and when does it work and how does it work and what if I have a whole bunch of people at my house during the winter months. And so really the simplification of the billing system is another reason why we're recommending that adjustment.
Tony, we have a question here. Barry, member Jacobson, go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Tony. I just want to clarify what you're saying, so that every month, regardless of what month it is, your wastewater charge will be the minimum of your actual water use and 12,000.
Your actual water use will no more than 12,000.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
So just to give an example, if you use 7,000 gallons of water this month, your wastewater will be 7,000. If you use 20,000 gallons of water that month, your water bill would be 20,000, but your wastewater bill would be capped at 12,000.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you.
Were there questions from the floor there? Go ahead in the chamber. I think it's member Fultz.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that I have this as well. If somebody is irrigating their yard, GRU is not treating that water, wastewater, correct?
Correct. That is correct.
And so I've spent years, because this is the way it was explained to me by GRU, and as a CWC auditor in people's homes, I spent years explaining to people, because it was explained to me this way by GRU, that this is actually a very fair system, because if we don't have to treat it as wastewater, we shouldn't charge you for treating it as wastewater. And I've explained it that way to people for years. And so now it seems like what we're saying is, actually, we're going to go ahead and charge you for it anyway, even though we aren't treating it as wastewater. And so it just seems to me to now go back to folks and explain that, well, this seemingly very fair way that we've done it for so many years now, we're not going to do it that way anymore, and your bills are going to go up simply because of how we're accounting. That seems a bit problematic to me.
So Member Foltz, thank you for that. I think you are hitting the crux of it. So I think that is the challenge. We do have customers that are precisely the way you're describing is they understand the system and they're using less during those winter months, setting a cap, and then now that's going to go away and that's going to be challenging. So yes, that is true. We also have folks on the other side that don't understand the system, and so kind of on the other side of the equation, they have struggles because they don't understand kind of the way it's set up now. And this is intended to simplify it, and it will simplify it for those customers, but like as you're stating, may make it more challenging for others. And I think that's why I wanted to raise the discussion. Another challenge we have, frankly, I will tell you, is that vast majority of utilities do not do winter max. So the vast majority of them do an actual use with a cap. And so one of the challenges that presents for us is when we compare our wastewater rates, our rates appear higher because essentially we're selling less units of wastewater. And so one of the reasons I will tell you is for bringing this up is to look for that consistency with the industry and how the industry does, and the best practice is not to do a winter max, but to do it the way with a actual use with a cap. But again, I'll acknowledge exactly what you said. If everything is done precisely, winter max is sometimes the more accurate way to predict which wastewater is returning to your system.
Well, and regardless of whether people understand the system or not, essentially what we're saying here is that we are now going to be charging people for a service that we are not providing. And so just at the base, that seems unfair to me. And I, regardless of whether if every other utility that's out there is messing over their customers in that way, that's their business. But I don't think that we should do that myself.
Can I interject here, Tony? I don't know that it's necessarily we're not providing a service that they're not using, because either way, you're setting up a proxy, right? Right. And the system can be gamed either way, unless I'm mistaken. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tony.
No, that is correct. Right. I think you're trying to estimate wastewater use, and there's ways to like you said, game the system either way. Without a meter, you're estimating, and you're not precise. You don't know precisely how much, and you're trying to do the best job you can to estimate that. And winter max is a good way to do that, but it also can be gamed.
I think member Sperling-Woods had a question too. Go ahead.
Hi, yes, I agree. When we did all the trainings with GRU and GRU customers and the CWC, a lot of customers, once they understood it, they complied with it. And so how is it going to be for like people that have swimming pools that only use water to fill them, that we've trained and that we've talked to, and the people that use it for irrigation? How is that going to be compensated, or is it all just going to be, right out of the water use and then charged straight up for sewer? Because that's a lot of the conversations we have. And then commercial is not going to have any kind of break at all, my understanding of the new rates. Is that correct?
So commercial, in terms of, I don't know what, and I'm sorry, I remember Sperling-Wood. So they currently have they paid 95% of their water use, but essentially 100% of their water typically comes to our system because any outdoor use they have, typically they have a irrigation meter, and so that for commercial, I believe the recommendation is more accurately represent their use.
I know in the school, sorry.
Go ahead.
In the schools, we don't have irrigation meters. All the water we use for the hose, for any of the outdoor activities, anything, washing down, pressure washing, all the things we do, especially in the summer, have no irrigation meter. And the irrigation charge is even more than the water charge. So there's kind of a discrepancy with that. And we were told the irrigation, when we do have an irrigation meter, charge went up because we weren't paying wastewater on that too. So just a little clarification on those numbers.
Yeah, just to clarify, so if you have an irrigation meter, any water going through the irrigation system, you don't pay wastewater on that. Correct. And that is true for a residential customer as well.
Correct, but it's a higher rate for the water, right?
It starts at the second tier. Yep. Your irrigation water.
Thank you.
The other thing I will just share is, so I think, again, we're all hitting one part is for folks that really understand winter max, it will require some education. And so we are working, we have developed a rudimentary communication plan, but we are working on getting that more in place for when we get to the place if we implement this rate, so that we have folks understand what's coming and what has changed.
Tony, Chair Porter here. Is there a way to go back? I mean, are we missing water if, you know, we use potable water and it comes back as wastewater?
Mm-hmm.
If we track the water we use and the wastewater that comes back, is there a tremendous mismatch there? Are we losing a lot of water for irrigation? Or I'm trying to see how accurate our estimations are in our current system.
Oh, I see what you're saying, Chair.
Yeah.
So what complicates it really is inflow and infiltration into the wastewater system.
Yeah,
so,
I always forget that.
Rainfall and runoff comes in there. So it's really difficult to kind of try to do that mass balance.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Mass balance. I was trying to figure out a way to say that without saying that term, but you beat me to it. All right. Yeah. We're off on a well on the west side of town, and we're frightfully efficient water users. But again, even at the low rate of water we use, probably still half of the water we use is for outside water use. But our water use is way below average, even with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd have to echo Member Foltz's comments in that a lot of people have worked in town to get everybody to understand how the winter max is used and how accurate it can be and how it's used to be a fair arbiter of the actual inside water use that goes down the drains and toilets and must be treated. So don't disagree that in my own personal feelings, that moving to a more industry standard is probably the way you need to go, but it's going to be a hard sell to communicate this to everybody that has listened over the years to your explanation. So I'm all ears when it comes to how you're going to roll that out and get the people to understand that.
Mr. Chair?
It's a great point, Chair Porter. I mean, you know, we know all this is fraught with problems and challenges. We do understand that probably, you know, a third of the calls that come into our customer service area are for people that don't understand their wastewater bill because of the winter max.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
And the utility is struggling with, you know, reducing the cost of its shared services and reducing, you know, our almost 40,000 calls a month that come into our call center at our admin building, you know, for people, you know, it's almost in a lot of cases reached the point where people accuse us of making up numbers. I mean, you know, you need to hear some of the conversations that are had in customer service. And you know, I really appreciate what Jason's saying about the work that's been done and, you know, communicating to the public and those types of things. I mean, it's really something. We're all faced with these really hard decisions across the organization. There's no easy decisions left. for you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, everything we're doing is nipping at each other's heels on every one of our constituent issues and inherent issues. I mean, today, you know, we were told that we'll reduce the general fund to 36 million, which is only 9 million over what we can afford to pay. Okay, hey, how are we going to make that up, guys? And don't let me confuse this. We don't have to go down that road. All
Yeah,
I'm saying is
please,
that,
please.
yeah, I'm not trying to go down this road, but it factors into all the things that we're looking to do, because we're not going to get that with rate increases.
No.
So, there are these other things that we're trying to employ to create industry standards that will also create fairness for the utility.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Mr. Chair?
All right,
if I may?
General Manager, I understand. Yeah, go ahead. Floor comment?
Yes, please, this member Wheeler. If, this is addressed to Mr. Cunningham, why 12,000 gallons as a cutoff? And does that address member Foltz's concerns, having that cap? Does that help somehow address the impact or not?
Yeah, Chair, Member Wheeler. So 12 is, again, we looked at the industry and there were variable, there were different caps that were out there. 12 was probably the most common, but it wasn't overwhelming, but it was probably the most common cap in Florida. Part of the reason we are looking at 12 is, again, kind of the same reason that we're recommending 12 as the third tier cutoff. It's because that really is an acknowledgement of above that, it is most likely, almost for sure, outdoor use, and it's not going to be returning to our system. And so that's kind of how we got to 12. And yeah, so that's it.
Thank you.
Any
Mr.
other
Chair,
comments from
I
the
have a
floor that we
question.
missed?
Sorry, go ahead.
For Mr. Cunningham, I'm just curious, if you look at the money that's taken in on current wastewater charges versus the operating costs of the wastewater system, including maintenance, clearing jams at the headworks from mops that are flushed down the toilet and all the other trash that isn't just human waste, and equipment upgrades and replacement. How do those numbers look? Has there been any analysis that could be shared with us?
Well, sure. Yeah, so for sure, we need more revenue in the wastewater system, I guess is the simplest way to do it, to continue to operate and maintain the wastewater system and remain resilient and reliable. There needs to be more improvement and investment in the wastewater system. This modification will increase the revenue in the wastewater system and address some of that challenge. But as we look at the next several years between aging infrastructure, the cost of all of basically our chemicals and everything you need to run a system, and the and the challenges, like you said, with wipes and the increasing things, the cost to treat wastewater is continuing to increase, and so that is a challenge in our industry, and something we are tackling daily. Is how do we reduce our expenses so we can increase our investment?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead. We have another comment from the floor.
Right. So I just wanted to respond to the general manager. I've obviously never worked in GRU customer service, but I like I said, have had a tremendous number of these conversations with CWC clients over the years, and I can explain the Winter Max to them in a way that is based in fairness. And I explain to people that you're not being charged for water that's not being treated as wastewater, and that's a fair proposition, and people get that. You talk about the number of customer service calls you get about this. I encourage you to think for a second about the customer service calls you're going to get in the summer after this is enacted, when people see what their new wastewater bills look like for water that they're using for irrigation that's now being charged for wastewater. I just think that this is a serious mistake that's going to seriously damage GRU in the public, opinion realm. And I think of all the proposals that you brought forward tonight, I'm fully in support of, with the exception of this one. And so I really think that we need to reconsider this. Thank you.
So member Foltz, man, I really appreciate your frankness and your experience with CWC and in the field. So really appreciate you giving the feedback. Part of why we want to bring these things to you all and to others is to try to understand that better, and then at the end of the day, make the best decision. So really appreciate what you were sharing.
Thanks, Tony. We have a couple other comments. Member Sperling Woods had her hand up, and then Member Jacobson.
Yeah.
Teresa, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I should have took the hand down. I forgot to take it down.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah. All right. That puts it on to you, Barry.
Oops, sorry. It's just a question of, I just want to see what the impact is. I was just looking, last I looked, people use about 70 gallons per person per day. Just for household use, that's the number I last heard. So we're not, talking a huge difference between that, which I think is like 8,000 gallons and this 12,000. So what is 4,000 gallons of wastewater cost? Just so we can get an idea. We talk about how much the bills would change.
So 4,000, if you irrigated in a month, that additional 4,000, that would be about $24.
Is that the water charge or the wastewater charge?
That's the wastewater charge.
So $24.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not insignificant. It's not. We're not talking time. We're not talking pennies here. I just wanted to get an order of magnitude on that. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Member Crow.
Well, it's actually Don Davis, but.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Member Davis.
I flipped over to the next page and I noticed that the potential increase in revenues from wastewater based on this change would be a significant range from 1 million to 3 million. And so I'm wondering if Tony can talk a little bit about why he can't pin that number down a little bit better for us.
Sure, yeah. So the biggest reason is price elasticity. So we can apply the change and apply it to historic data, but what the challenge is to predict behavioral change. So like I said, one of the reasons why this is the industry standard and why we are recommending it is because it will provide more of a price signal on your water use, which then is intended to and typically results in changed behavior and less water use, which then also equates to less wastewater charge. And so it's just that predictability of how behavioral change when seeing that price signal. I will say part of the other reason for proposing this is that change over time, is to continue to cherish our source of water in our community and seek to use less.
All right. Any other comments from the floor that I missed? Sorry about being laggard on that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Member Crow.
I've got
it right this time.
I've got three very low-level questions here, if I may. I read the PowerPoint presentation that we've been seeing here sometime back when Robin sent it out, and I kept looking for comparisons of our pricing structure with other jurisdictions, maybe small places or maybe larger places like, Orlando or Jacksonville or Tampa or whatever. And I didn't see any comparative rate structures. I know it's too much to ask for just off the top of the head to talk about rates, like just in discussion, but I'm wondering if we can be provided with rate information so we can compare what the rates are currently in Gainesville and the rates as proposed against rates in other jurisdictions. Is that possible, Tony?
Absolutely. Yes, we have that, and we typically provide that annually during budget season. But what it does, just so I'm clear on what we typically do, is we just compare a customer in Gainesville, that GRU customer that uses 7,000 gallons of water or 7,000 gallons of wastewater, how much is their bill? And then compare that to JEA and OUC and other utilities. So that's what we typically do in those rate.
And just off the top of your head, and you won't be held to this, in general, how does this proposed rate increase correspond to those other rates?
So, so where we typically fall wastewater side compared to other utilities is between 50 and 75%, type of thing. So not quite in the middle, not quite to 3/4, somewhere right in there. But as I said, with our wastewater rate with Winter Max, because no one else does that, we're selling less units of wastewater, so our rate is actually inflated higher compared to others because of that.
Well, I think it would be helpful if you could provide the UAB with a nice little memo that would summarize all that.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, my second question is rather also simple. Do I understand that we're actually losing money on our water or wastewater system at this time?
I might have Ed answer that question if it's related to the general fund transfer.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
Is the cost of providing the water and the service greater than the revenue that's being generated?
Well, the problem with that is kind of the thing that I just talked to Wendell about. Our divisions, our service sectors are paying more in a general fund transfer, which is an expense or an expenditure to us. So, water and wastewater is probably the healthiest of all the 5 systems that we have. But I know there's times in which, they have to go into reserves to pay the general fund transfer. So yes, we don't recover all our expenses through revenue when you consider the general fund transfer as part of those expenses.
Including the GFT.
Does that make sense?
Well, okay, I understand much better now. Okay, and then the third question, does GRU have the authority to leverage these new rates on its own, or does it have to go through the city commission?
We have to get approval from the city commission.
Has to go through city commission, okay. That's all I have.
Which the intent is, or we're on the calendar to go to their next meeting on April 15th with the same presentation and recommendations.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, so I think I'm going to move on from this slide.
Was there another question still on the floor? Sorry.
I do have, I'm still trying to find this compromise that would make it work in response to Member Foltz's comments. I'm not the numbers guy. But would it make any difference if we based the wastewater on the lowest 2 months of use and just didn't say January and February to simplify matters? Just look at the past year and say, what were your 2 lowest uses months, 2 uses months, and we're going to base it for that in the next 12 months. Does that help any?
I don't, from what we are trying to accomplish, I don't think that helps. I think if you're going to have a max system, I think doing it during the winter makes the most sense. Because one of the challenges is the gamemanship the other way is you're not using any water those 2 months because you're not in town. Oh. And then you don't pay any wastewater all year round.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
And we have that happens, but that's much rarer. But that can occur. I've had customers tell me they do not bathe for those 2 months.
They don't come into the office to talk to you and tell you that, though.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so I'm going to move on. I guess what would be helpful at the end is, so I have a recommendation. What would be helpful at the end for me is from the UAB to have a narrative around Winter Max. And if it's just denying it, that could be the narrative, but that I could then portray to the city commission when we take these to the city commission. So think about that as I kind of move on.
Okay. Thanks, Tony.
So the reclaimed water rate, so like I said, currently it's $1 per 1,000 gallons. When you build a reclaim system early on, you are really promoting the use of reclaimed water because it is more of a disposal than it is a product that you're providing. As your system becomes more mature, which is where our system is now, it's about 27 years old. It now becomes more of a valuable product. And in fact, the Water Management District is encouraging us to continue to raise the rate of reclaimed water to promote conservation of reclaimed water. And so in an effort to do that and promote that conservation and in long-term water supply for our community, we are moving again closer to a pure cost of service for reclaimed water. We're recommending it be at 50% of the potable water rate, which would be $1.23 per 1,000 gallons. And just so everybody kind of gives you context, we only have about 1,500 reclaimed water customers. Most of them are located around the Kanapaha plant, which is where we originally built our original reclaim system. Most of the vast majority of the reclaimed water from the Main Street plant, it goes to Sweetwater Wetlands Park. So this is just a summary, kind of stepping back through. The first adjustment that we were recommending is to lower the third tier water rate to greater than 12,000 gallons. The second adjustment is to adjust the City of Alachua wholesale water rate to $2.67. The third one was to adjust the second tier water rate from $3.77 to $3.87. The fourth one was to adjust the commercial wastewater rate from 95% multiplier to 100% of their water use. The fifth one, which we spent a lot of time on, I think everybody remembers, is the replacement letter max with water use and a cap. And then the last one was reclaim, to adjust the reclaim water rate. So really our recommendation to you all and to the City Commission is to draft ordinances and language to recommend with these recommended rate structures, but not to implement them until October 1st. As we finish the budget process, and we'll have other rates that are adjusted, implement these structure changes at the same time. So I'll back up to the summary slide if anybody wants to have any questions or discuss any of those.
All right, Tony, I think I'll lead off. I kind of held my comments because I wanted to hear everybody else. And I'm sorry, all I could think of is all the time I spent explaining winter max to everybody we've dealt with over the years. And it's like, oh, geez, please. But how much of the effect on these bills? You didn't really, in my opinion, give enough strength to the argument that one of your guiding things here is to give a better price signal for the sanctity of our water use. Mm-hmm. That we're going to be water use constrained even more and more as the years go by. And in the water arena, we've been pretty successful sending that price signal down the pipe, so to speak, to the consumers. How much of all 6 of these bullets here, how much of that price signal is wrapped up in the 5th bullet?
Yeah, so that's a really, really good question. And I will answer your question, but I will start by saying it's very difficult to kind of answer the question of, hey, how much, this isn't a pure rate increase. This is a rate structure modification. And so with the rate structure modification, it's not everyone's bill is going to go up by 20 cents a month or whatever, because it really depends on your use, how you use your water. So essentially, you know, in the I'll go down the list. The third tier adjustment, it's only going to affect you if you are a pretty heavy water user, and most likely you're going to be an irrigator, someone that uses a lot of outdoor use. And if you use more than 12,000 gallons of water, then that difference between 12 and 16 will increase your bill. The second one, obviously, it's only impacting folks that live in the city of Alachua, and the wholesale rate we have to them. The third tier, or the third one with the second tier adjustment, it's a 10 cents per kgal adjustment. So if you use, like our average use is between 4,000 and 5,000 gallons. If you use 5,000 gallons, you're going to pay 10 cents more a month in water use. So it's not a large adjustment. The commercial wastewater, so they have a 95% multiplier. Now it's 100, so that's a 5% difference in their what they'll pay. The winter max, we kind of gave a few examples. The winter max is where if everybody behaved the exact same this year as they did last year, where it's going to be a significant difference in revenue into the wastewater system. In that neighborhood of 1 to 1.5 or more $1 million in overall revenue. And again, it would be from customers that typically are irrigation customers, customers that also are irrigation customers that knew how winter max worked, did not irrigate during the winter months, and established a lower winter max during those months, and then irrigated the rest of the year. That would be the segment of customers that increase in revenue would come from. And then on the reclaimed water side, it would be all customers, because it's every kgal would be an additional 23.5 cents. Is that Chair Porter? Is that what you're part of what you were asking?
Well, yeah, it kind of, there's no way to answer my question how I wanted it answered. So you did a nice summary of everything that needed to be talked about there. So you're left with the fact that you want to send a price signal, and this is the best way to do it. And I just, in the lower economic sectors of town, how many houses do we have that use 12,000 gallons a month? How many?
So that's a really good question. We looked at some, we did like some heat maps and things of that nature. And what you see in the heat maps is, this is going to be concentrated in areas where you have a lot of outdoor use and irrigation, right?
Okay.
So, and typically that's further west in our service area, where there are larger yards and folks irrigate. But it wasn't exclusive. It didn't show that there were customers all over our system,
right,
that could be impacted, but it was much more concentrated toward places where you had larger yards and irrigation.
So it would mostly affect people on my side of town that can't be bothered by irrigating before 10 and after 4 on their designated days. But I didn't say that. All right. Okay. Comments from anybody else? Teresa, is that a new comment or is your hand still up?
That is a new comment. I have a couple comments and questions.
Oh, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. First off, what is the impact on commercial customers? We just had all the meter fees raised like within the past 3 years, from like $9.95 all the way up to $200 and $300 a month for some meters, depending on the inch size of the water line. So that's my first big question, that we've already had that huge rate increase on the commercial side just through the meter fees. And then what's the percent increase? What's the predicted percent increase for commercial water users? And then now to go to the reclaimed water question, I noticed the other day the fire trucks letting water out, they do testing, they do all kinds of things, they tap into the fire hydrant system. Does the fire hydrant system use reclaimed water, or is that all potable water that we've already paid and cleaned, and then we pump into the fire trucks and the fire system? So that's a multitude of questions, or maybe things to think about.
Okay. So thanks, member. So I'll address the wastewater. I don't remember, Ed might, I don't remember, we did a cost of service analysis with a external firm, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, that recommended, as you said, the commercial meter charges, that they're, basically your meter charge, part of what it's covering is maintaining that meter. And the larger a meter is, the more expensive it is to maintain that meter. And so their recommendation was to adjust those meter charges so that as you get to those larger meters, the customer is paying for that cost as well. And so, that you are correct. We made that adjustment through the recommendation of that cost of service firm. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. So then, speaking of what would be the difference here, this one's a lot more straightforward. So I mean, it's a 5% increase in their wastewater, the amount of wastewater that they're being billed for, and so it's a 5% change in that wastewater bill because we're now, one way to look at it is previously we weren't charging them for all of their wastewater returned to our system, and now we are charging them for 100% of that wastewater return. So that's the wastewater. The reclaim question on the fire department, what they use. So no, they use our potable system as you described. We do not have an extensive reclaim system. It's a very small area, so we only have reclaimed water in a very small area. And we part of the reason we don't connect hydrants to that was something we explored early on in the mid 90s. Is your reclaim system typically isn't as reliable as your water system. And so if you, obviously for fire protection, you need a highly reliable system, which is our potable water system. So hydrants are only connected to our potable water system. But as you said, it is highly treated water that's being used, and it's flushed and tested annually. So that's an area that we have looked at refining to be more efficient, but I think you're always going to flush those systems and always going to test and make sure you have the proper pressures to fight fires.
All right. Other questions from the floor?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, member.
If I may, I'm still trying to work through these and trying to kind of thread the needle down the middle here. Member Foltz mentioned that for folks who are trying to save, the winter months are a way to do it. You mentioned there are folks who don't care. They're irrigating their lawns whenever they want to on the west side. What if we were to go ahead and make this change, but do a simultaneous, significant increase in conservation efforts to lower the total rates for folks who do care? So yeah, we're going to get away from this winter rate. We're going to go to year round, but we're going to significantly increase funding for rebates or for conservation efforts to offset any potential rate increase. I don't know, would that solve these issues? Mr. Cunningham, do you have any response to that type of approach of reducing total rates?
Yeah, so I thought you were asking your other members. Sorry about that. So
it kind of is too.
Yeah. So I think I don't know if it would offset any of the changes. We are always promoting water conservation. It is a conundrum that we're in because we're in an industry that we sell a product we're asking people to use less of. And if everybody starts using less of it, the cost of it goes up a little bit. And so that is a really hard conundrum to be in. I will tell you why we promote that in the water system is because our next unit of water beyond the Florida aquifer is going to be very, very, very expensive. And so we want to really have a sustainable kind of water use in our community as long as possible. And by doing that is using less water. And so I'm answering your question by saying I think we're doing a significant amount of water conservation education and understanding. So I'm not sure there'd be enough more to make up that difference. I just don't know. And it really, part of the challenge is it's a segment of our customers, right? So there's a segment of our customers that are irrigators, and then a lot of other folks that aren't. And so this is really focused on that segment of customers.
All right.
Yeah, I would add that, I mean, we're not trying to make this a zero-sum game. We're actually trying to make it a
Yeah.
revenue enhancer.
Yeah. All right.
I mean,
Comments from
I
the
mean,
floor?
you
Yeah.
can't hide from that, really.
No, you can't. Comments from the floor? Member Fultz, I believe.
Sure. So, first off, I want to thank Mr. Cunningham. He's obviously been, very thoughtful on this issue, and I appreciate his forthrightness and his willingness to get into the weeds on this. I thank you very much for that. I do think, though, particularly recommendation number 5 here is going to exacerbate inequity in this community. I think it's going to upset customers. And I think it flies in the face of how this utility has been explaining its wastewater charges to customers for many, many years. That being said, we are a recommending body. We make recommendations to the city commission. We're not a rubber stamp body. And I think it's very important that we send a signal to our city commission that at least on this recommendation, number 5, they need to look at it and consider it very closely, separately and outside of the other 5 recommendations there. And so I would like to make a motion to recommend all but number 5. And I hope that folks will go along with that. But at the very least, I would like to have a separate vote on that recommendation as opposed to the other 5. Thank you.
I
Mr.
think
Chair?
Member Fultz has made a recommendation, so I think, do we hear a second or any further discussion on that?
I'm not seconding. I have comments. If anybody wants to second, they're welcome to second, but I have some comments that I've been waiting to share.
Go ahead, Member Rockwell.
With the
Sorry I
board.
missed you.
No, I've just been waiting for everybody else to kind of wrap up their thoughts. And I'm speaking directly to the proposed wastewater rate structure change. I can definitely understand why people would have a negative reaction to this, especially if they've been engaged in public outreach about winter max and how that works. And we've been doing it that way for a long time, which in and of itself might signal that maybe a change is necessary. Personally, I don't think that the 1-for-1 water wastewater rate structure is unfair, and here's why. It's a public utility. It's a public service. It's kind of like roads. Any public service, really. Everybody needs it. Everybody uses it. Nobody wants to pay for it. It gets abused and it needs maintenance. So it's part of the grand social experiment. It's kind of, and we're all in this together. And the bottom line is, what other people do affects the cost of goods and services that you use, whether you're talking about, public or private, commercial. I mean, that's just the nature of our economic system. While I might have a neighbor who fills up an inflatable pool with 500 gallons of water and then dumps it in their backyard and it's not really going through the system, that neighbor might be the same person who flushed 20 diapers down the toilet and jammed up the system and caused a manhole to overflow or whatever. So and that might be a talking point that we can use to sugarcoat the bitter pill, so to speak. So these are just my thoughts. Again, and I think from my previous comments at other meetings, the financial stability and longevity of the utility are kind of my main focus when I look at these things. So I'm really okay with it. It's just a matter of how we sell it, in my opinion. Rates are going to go up somewhere. there's no getting around it. So those are just my thoughts. You guys can continue with your motion or whatever. Thanks.
Hang tight for that. Thank you, Member Rockwell. Member Miles has our hand up. Go ahead, Carla.
Thank you. That's Member Lewis. I'm sorry.
Oh, geez,
But
gosh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. But
Yeah.
so I'm gonna I hear what and people I get fussed at a lot about making sure I do my due diligence to the utility at the same time that I'm advocating for the community, because you know I advocate more for the downward rate pressure on customers than due diligence to the utility. I think it's important, like Jason said, that we keep in mind that we have an equity focus right now. And right now, I don't know if anybody gave a second or anything, but I'm gonna have to side with Jason. And it's not just because I also audit for CWC, but it is important that we maintain these relationships, and not saying that this isn't something that you may be able to revisit it in the past, but to just approve it and push it before we have the engagement piece first, I think would be detrimental. And I'm gonna have to go with Jason on this one, even though I see 100% Member Rockwell's point. We have to make sure that we are healthy financially, but right now that would cause putting upward pressure on our customers. And that's not something that I would agree with until some education. And I understand the need. And that's why I say we need to do our due diligence to the community, educate, get their input, prepare people for these changes, and then revisit them once we've had an opportunity to do so. So I'm gonna side with Jason on this.
All right. Would that be a second?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's not our normal way of doing a motion in a second with comments in between, but I think yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I did not, Member Lewis is participating virtually, and I do not have an extraordinary circumstance affidavit for her.
Oh, gotcha. So she can't.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I'll add my comment and somebody else can add the second, and hopefully the vote passes in Jason's favor. Sorry about that.
Mr. Chair,
That's
I
all
second.
right. That's all right. We're all living in strange times.
Mr. Chair, I second.
Okay. Member Foltz, if you could, just for the clarity of this fogged zoom out person here as the chair, could you restate your motion?
Sure. My motion is that we recommend actions 1 through 4 and 6, and we do not recommend action 5 until further discussion and consideration by the utility and the city commission.
Okay, and Member Wheeler recognized that as a second that he seconded?
I do.
Yeah, okay. All right, is there any further discussion? Do we want to?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
What would that mean exactly? I mean.
Well, the recommendation, there's 6 items all wrapped up in water and wastewater.
The motion says that without, until further discussion, what discussion? Are we going to have public meetings? I mean, what's the bar?
Again, we are an advisory board to the city commission, and these are recommendations to the city. And basically if I can paraphrase what this says to the city, we're okay with 5 of these items and 1 of them we're not. That's for their use and their perusal. And if they want further instructions on why we're uneasy about that, I'm sure we can provide that. Mr. Cunningham, if you wanted to provide a little bit of elucidation.
So I think what Chair, what I think what it would mean from our perspective is, we would obviously communicate that when we take it to the city commission, and what it would mean if the city commission agreed is we just wouldn't implement it this year, and might be something we explore and look at bringing back in another year. But we would take the advisement from you all and from the city commission if they agreed, and we would just not include it this year in the changes.
I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but I do want to put my own 2 cents worth in there, and I think the board generally agrees with it, is that taking care of our water resources, and your comment about the next bit of water after the Florida aquifer is going to be hugely expensive. I think we're all aware of that. I think Member Miles and Member Foltz put it together. Member Lewis, I'm sorry, Chief, put it together very carefully that the way it's currently structured, we might have some problems with an equity distribution on the impacts of these rate changes. That's not a disagreement with the goal of what we're trying to do here with water resources.
Right. Understood.
Yeah. Any other
I
further?
agree.
Yeah. Any other further comments from the floor on that?
I've got a couple of questions.
We have a motion and a second. I think that brings us up to the point where we can get a roll call on the vote.
I think Member Crow had some comments.
Oh, I'm sorry, Member Crow.
Yeah, I think we need some discussion on the motion. I have simple questions again. We said that 7,000 gallons a month is your reference bill. Would this proposal really change a person consuming 7,000 gallons a month? And what about one that's a large amount, say 14,000 gallons a month? What would that change from and to? Do you have that right now off the top of your head?
Yes, member, are you speaking about number 5, about the winter max?
No, just in general, your proposal.
So, so for like the first 2, it would have no impact. For the third one, if someone was using 7,000 gallons, their monthly water bill would go up by 30 cents a month.
Okay, and how about a big guy like at 14,000?
So then a 14,000, it would, let's see, so 4 to 12, so it would go up 80 cents.
So in the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot of money, really.
Well, that's just for the first 3 items.
That's for the first 3. The fourth one would only be for a commercial customer, not a residential customer. The fifth one, it would depend on if they currently had a winter max or not have. This is where it gets really complicated. If they're if they currently have a winter max or if they don't, if they're an irrigator or they're not. And so it's hard to really say on the fifth one, with your general example of just 7,000 or 8,000 gallons, or even the 14,000. Well, I guess on the 14,000, what it would change is they would no longer get charged for wastewater above the 12. So it is really complicated. You start to get into the weeds of what kind of customer it is and how if they use winter max or not, and those types of things. And then the fifth one, just to be, again, there's only about 1,500 reclaimed customers, and so it would affect those 1,500 every 1,000 gallons they use would be more expensive.
And from your comments, I take it that the GRU is given a certain allocation from the Water Management District. Is that right?
That is correct.
And how close are we to bumping our head on that?
Ha! You don't know how loaded of a question that is.
No, I don't.
So I'll try to do it quick. So we have a consumptive use permit that is for 30 million gallons a day, up to 30 million gallons per day on an average annual daily basis. We currently use about 22 to 23 million gallons per day. So we have room. We believe that allocation will last until around 2035 or so. But this is where it gets complicated. The Water Management District currently is trying to adopt a minimum level for Keystone Heights lakes. And so if they do that, the current minimum flow and level that they're currently looking at, if they adopt that, it will reduce our allocation, and we would have to contribute funding to a project to help mitigate the impacts of our water use in our community. And there's a lot more that goes with that. So when you say how close are we, you could say, well, we have 30 MGD, we have a ways, but the reality is today we are trying to work with the Water Management District and other water users in North Florida to address this minimum flow and level regulatory requirement as we speak.
If we weren't
What would that
drawing down
payment
from
be,
the
Tony?
Florida aquifer, does that mean, I don't know, going to the river, or, you know, to the Swanee River or something?
Yeah, so that's a really, really good question. So I think what our strategy has been and continues to be in our community is that we are trying to recharge as much water as possible back into the ground in order to kind of keep a sort of a local water cycle. And so we do that more than any other utility. We 70% of the water we remove from the ground, we're able to actually recharge back into the Florida aquifer locally. And that's very unique. So
you said 70%?
Sorry.
Did you say 70%?
Yes, 70%.
70%.
So that's 70%. It goes back to Chair Porter's question before. So 70% of the water we remove from the Florida aquifer, we're able to put 70% back. 100% of the water we receive at the wastewater treatment plant goes to either recharge or beneficial use.
Well, that's a very high percent.
Yes, yes. And so because of that, all of that is extending our ability to be able to use the Florida aquifer. And the reason we want to continue to do that is frankly because we're in the middle of the state. We don't have options like desalination of ocean water, or even really a big river or anything like that to pull from a certain. So again, our strategy as long as possible is to do that. Now, the district has done water supply plans where it looks at moving surface water across the state and things of that nature. And that's why when I say the next unit of water is really expensive, that's where the expense comes, is because of where we are, we would have to move water from a very, very long distance. We want to delay that or never get there if possible by using their current water withdrawal from the Florida aquifer as long as possible.
Okay, thank you. If you want to sell this to the City Commission, I'd recommend that you add some of these cost numbers and these future issues. They make a much stronger case, I think, for your proposal.
Appreciate that.
All right. Missing any comments? Oh, we're out of comments. Wow. Okay. There was a discussion. There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is this the point where we ask if there's any citizen input?
It is, sir, and there is none.
All right. Thank you, and thank you for hanging by all this time. Thanks. All right. So if I could ask staff to make a roll call for this motion.
Okay. Member Wheeler.
Aye.
Member Jacobson.
Aye.
Member Rockwell.
Nay.
Member Crow.
Yay.
I'm sorry, was that aye or nay?
Yay, yes.
Yes. Member Fultz.
Aye.
And Chair Porter.
Aye.
Okay, so that motion passes 5-1 with member Rockwell in dissent.
Yeah, we've got a pretty good track record of supporting GRU's wants and desires in terms of day-to-day finance over the past years I've been on this. And again, I think it speaks to the depth of our worry that this, after so much good work along a certain path, that this will come a cropper on that and create a lot of dissension within the city when we don't need it. Although I don't think anybody at all on the board disagrees with the intent that we take very, very close care of our water resources, and that GRU is among the state's leaders, if not the nation's leaders, in taking care of our water resources, which we always appreciate. In fact, the first thing I knew about GRU was the talent in their water and wastewater division, working with stormwater, because my significant life partner started out in stormwater management. And so when we moved here, she said, "Oh yeah, that water group there, that's pretty good." So with that being said, again, it remains to see how the city deals with that. But well, supporting water conservation in the future is all of our goals. Just not quite sure of this one. So a little bit editorializing by me. Sorry about that, everybody. But anyway.
Thank you. Thank you all. I really appreciate the feedback. Extremely helpful, and look forward to continue to work with you all in the future. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Tony. All right. We have a lot of things. We have two other things on the agenda tonight, but the next thing on new business is election of UAB officers. As you guys know, the chair and vice chair are one-year offices. So it's a time, it's our April meeting, so it's time to revisit that topic and march on into the future. The floor is open for comments.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think you've done an excellent job as chair, and I would be inclined to nominate you for that position for this coming year, and just put that on the floor.
I appreciate that comment, Member Wheeler, more than you can imagine. I would have to add for general audience that redesigning my classes and being a college advisor, I redesigned and redelivered my classes 3 different ways in the last year, and advised all of my students via Zoom and everything else. And I'm moving on in years, and I tell you, just from the bottom of my heart, it just worn the stuffings out of me. The gas tank is empty. So it's gotten to the point where it's like one more thing, I'm just out the door. But again, that's a little bit too much. That's TMI. While I appreciate Member Wheeler's comments to the heart, and I appreciate his vote of confidence, I'm just going to have to bow out. I just don't think that I could give it a fair shake for another year as the chair. So thank you for that, Member Wheeler. I remember that fondly, but sorry, gotta let you down on that one. So, dead silence. Anybody else have any comments? Barry.
And that, I was going to second Member Wheeler's recommendation, but I think since you took the wise path, I think I'll punish him and recommend nominate Member Wheeler for chair.
Well, it is more typical that the vice chair moves up, so that would be the typical thing.
Is that a tag? You're it?
Pretty close, pretty close. Although in due respect to this board, we have a lot of extremely talented people and extremely careful people, not prone to wing flapping, and serious acting is pretty much the hallmark of people associated with this board since I've been on it. Not to say we haven't had our disagreements and our heartfelt disagreements, but at the end of the day, we've all tried to move the ball forward in running this utility in a manner that befits this city. So, you know, honestly, I think um, part of the chair's job is just to be a traffic cop and try to not stick too much into the details and let the other members do that. And I think all the past chairs have done that, and what I tried to do also. So, again, I think the floor is still open. We have a vice chair right now at the beginning and a chair at the beginning of the meeting. At the end of the meeting, we'll have something different.
Can
Mr.
I
Chair.
just put, I want to put my input in, even though today I can't vote. Dang it. So
That's all right. We'll listen to you. Go ahead, and then we'll have another comment from the floor. Go ahead.
okay, so I just wanted to say, first of all, that I just respect everybody on the board, and so I would like to see, even though I can't nominate Jason Hessler or Member Crow move into somewhat of a leadership role. I have, even though sometimes I don't have a lot of input because y'all be dead on and there's nothing for me to add, but I do respect some of the meat of the matter that Member Crow and Member Hessler has, that the way they dig into some of the meat of the matter. And I think that's reflective of the leadership that's been on there with Mary Alford and Michael and Wendell since I've been there. So that's my input.
We're having problems with names tonight. I can't get your name right, and our Jason is Jason Fultz instead of Hessler.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jason Fultz.
Yeah, we're mixing up. Yep.
Right. Shout out to Mr. Hessler, my friend.
Yeah,
but, and Wendell is taking both of us some getting used to. So don't feel no way about the name. I still have to get used to it myself.
Yeah. Well, good comments. Thank you, Carla. And then we have a comment from the
Can I ask
floor. Go ahead, Barry. Yeah.
Can I ask a point of order?
Yeah.
So are we supposed to nominate and have a second? Are we supposed to have nominate a slate? You know, kind of really how are we supposed to be doing?
Well, usually in the way that we do it on campus is it's a process of elimination because there's not everybody leaping to volunteer. So it's like who's left. And so by the time you get down to the nomination, that's pretty much who gets it. So we can go any way you want, but I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of disagreement how we go on that. Robin, if staff wants to weigh in and tell me I'm full of water. Yep.
I think, and I will let Ms. Bennett correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the process is just to have a nomination and a second, and then take a vote.
Gotcha.
Is that correct, Ms. Bennett?
It is. I'm trying to unmute and there I am. It is correct.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair?
So, yeah, go ahead.
I would second Member Jacobson's nomination for Member Wheeler as chair, and I would also nominate Member Fultz as vice chair.
I would second that nomination.
All right. So we have a couple of people nominated for the respective jobs. The floor is open for comments. Member Fultz?
Yeah, I appreciate that nomination. I'm actually going to decline at this point. I still have not even finished my orientation for being a part of the UAB and still feel like I have an awful lot to learn and am appreciating being here and learning from you all. And I think I'd like to do that for at least another year before I consider something like that. But I did want to voice support for Member Wheeler as chair. Thank you.
Well, Jason, I would have to add, as vice chair, you would be in support and you would still have the other year to learn. So yeah, just throw that out there, just for your cogitation there. And I would also have to add that you've been associated with issues in front of this city, in front of this utility for many, many years. So there's not many in this community that would have your background information in this utility. So again, don't sell yourself short. Again, you're welcome to do what you think is right for yourself, but again, I thought I'd put my vote of confidence in you going forward into the future. But we do have an uncontested nomination for the chair. Floor is still open.
I wanted to just echo what Wendell just said, Jason. I just wanted to echo that, and having completed a full orientation. And again, I respect your decision, but just know that you have a lot that you can teach the utility as well. So don't, again, sell yourself short.
Yeah. All right, we had a comment from the floor. Thank you. Carla, appreciate that. Another comment from the floor?
I was going to say the same thing that Carla just said.
We're going to gang up on you, Jason. Sorry. Yeah. So with that still sitting there, do we have another nomination for a vice chair?
Well, I actually had hoped to nominate, I would just say, I don't know if other folks had a chance to see this recently or not, but Barry and Carla did a presentation for, I think it was the League of Women Voters recently, and I thought that they did an amazing job. I thought it was a really fantastic presentation, and they really represented the UAB amazingly. And I wanted to voice appreciation for that, and I had hoped to nominate one of them for one of these positions tonight. And so I actually wanted to inquire whether Barry or Carla were interested in the vice chair position.
No, yeah, go ahead, Barry.
I'm thinking, yeah, I think I'll say yes. If this were the chair position, my head would explode. But I think vice chair, and I don't mean to presumptively take the place for Carla, so feel free, Carla, to step in too. And our talk really isn't.
You froze up there, Barry. Yeah, repeat that last. Yeah.
Oh, which? Oh, I was just say we weren't representing the UAB, but I do appreciate. I understand what you're saying, and I do appreciate that. No, I thought Carla did a great job.
Yeah. All right, member Lewis, what say you?
I'm sorry. I had a grandma break that I had to attend. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you just got nominated to be vice chair. Both you and member Jacobson were suggested.
Okay, so I'm like this. I yield to the senior if he wants to accept. If not, I'll be more than proud to learn along with Mr. Wheeler.
All right, coin toss in the air. We've got two people that will accept the nomination. Do we want to vote for that, or go ahead, Barry?
I mean, like I said, I'd be willing to do it. So it's up to you guys how you want to handle that.
Well, let me just say, please, member, I chair a few committees, and I have a broad plate, and I take on whatever I'm offered as a public servant. But by all means, please be my guest.
Thank you, and thank you for the backhanded compliment on my age too.
The tough part really is that every single person up here is so qualified and so dedicated that every one of us could and should be chair and or vice chair. That's so.
It's a year tour of duty, and it's a position of honor and respect to actually move this journey along. So, everybody will get their turn. If you're on here 4 years, and you're going to get a term for one of the offices. So I think the way that last conversation went, it boils down to Member Wheeler and Member Jacobson in the respective places, if I'm not mistaken, from Member Lewis's last comment.
For the sake of voting, I'll second both motions.
All right. So vote to approve the nominated slate of Member Wheeler for chair and Member Jacobson for vice chair. Would staff please call the roll on that?
Member Wheeler,
Aye.
Member Jacobson,
Aye.
Member Rockwell,
Aye.
Member Crow,
Member Crow?
Aye.
Member Foltz,
Aye.
and Chair Porter.
Aye.
Okay, so that passes unanimously, and those terms will start on May 1st.
All right. And please forgive me in advance if I pipe up at the wrong place. I did that the first meeting on campus when I was not chair of the curriculum committee for the College of Ag, and it was highly embarrassing. So I'll just ask for forgiveness in advance. So anyway, the other thing on our old business was the IRP, and our staff liaison, Robin, has done excellent work and actually collected all these things together in here for our reading pleasure. I would suggest, rather than going through that tonight at this late aspect of the meeting, that we now move along and get some kind of background thoughts in our head on what to move forward and what not to, because there's a lot to read in there that needs to be disseminated. Member Foltz's motions and summarization of Member Crow's and Member Foltz's comments, I thought was great, and needs to be looked at in detail for our next meeting. Comments from the floor. Member Foltz.
Mr. Chair, I understood that the purpose of putting these suggestions together were to have some sort of consensus to bring to the joint UAB City Commission meeting that's coming up in just a few weeks. So I had hoped, I mean, we've spent a few meetings talking about the IRP, and I feel like these points that we came away with at the workshop are fairly consensus, or could be consensus without too much work. And if folks would be willing to entertain that, I know it is 8:20, but I would like to leave tonight with something concrete to bring to the City Commission meeting that's coming up in a few weeks.
That's a great point, Jason, and I'll open the floor for comments on that. And I'll have to say that, again, if we boil it down to Member Foltz's summary of the items and questions, that we need to move forward and at least let the city know what we're thinking of, I can definitely agree with that. So again, open the floor for further comments.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
In our background materials, there was a summation by Jason, Member Foltz, of his 4 points and of Member Crow's recommendations from the IRP.
Yeah.
So that would be 6 total bullet points, and I think they're all great, and I think we should say that the UAB is bringing those to the City Commission with our recommendation that they direct us to move forward on them, move forward on those proposals.
Would that be a motion?
That is a motion.
All right.
Mr. Chair, just a point of order here on this motion. So there are 7 items and then a question to the City Commission. There are 7 recommendations and a question. So I just want to be sure that we're all talking about the same thing here.
Yeah.
Those you had a summation 4 of points, and then you added to Member Crow's 2 points.
3 from Member Crow.
Okay, then my math has never been my strength.
Fair. And then a question of the City Commission specifically as to whether they would like an official position statement from the UAB regarding the GFT.
And I can add some further elucidation on that point. I met with the mayor to set the agenda for the joint meeting between the City Commission and the UAB, and told him of our concerns about the GFT. And he said that he would like a letter from us, but that the question would probably be solved by the time we got to that point, since they were meeting. And General Manager Belarski already alluded to that with his comment in the middle of the meeting, so I'm never mind. Again, we can move forward in that and agree to leave that in. Events for right now might have superseded us, but again, our point of view needs to be in there.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Member Crow.
Yeah, I've got just a procedural question before we move on. Today is the 8th of the month, and of course, we have a meeting, I guess, in 2 weeks, which should be a workshop, which I guess is the 22nd. When is this meeting that is scheduled to take place with the City Commission?
The joint meeting is the 27th from memory, Robin?
26.
26. Well, there you go.
26.
And it actually takes the place of your regular monthly workshop.
Right.
Okay, so we will not have the workshop 2 weeks from today, but the meeting is scheduled on the 26th. So there's no other formal meeting of this group between now and the actual meeting with the commission then, right?
That's correct.
So this is our one time to shoot in the barrel and have our voices heard then, before we actually...
Formally, yes, although we'll have an audience with the City Commission in the meeting,
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I know it's getting pretty late, it's 8:23, but it sounds like this is our one chance to sort of sand around the edges a little bit and make sure that we're all in agreement with what we have here.
And Mr. Chair, just to clarify, both the agenda that we received tonight for the UAB meeting and the email invitation that we received from the mayor says April 27th, Tuesday, April 27th.
You are correct. I apologize.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I don't know what I was thinking. You are correct. It is the 27th.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I thought that was going to chalk up to another mistake I made today, and it's been a long list of them today, so, all right. Yeah, thank you, Member Crow, for reminding us of that, and that's absolutely correct, that this is our chance on that. In the shape that it's in right now, it will be a draft document, but it does show exactly what we're thinking. So I would be more than happy to submit this to the city as a draft of what our intents and what our wants and desires are.
Chair Porter?
Yeah, go ahead, General Manager Belarski.
No, when you have a moment, you finish that, just, I wanted to say something a little further about the GFT, okay?
Okay, right, before we leave tonight, yeah, thank you. Although my heart sinks, I don't want to hear it, but go ahead. Let's finish this piece of business out first. Point of description, this doesn't, as long as we say it's a draft, because it doesn't read like a finished document, but it does admirably say and correctly say the sense of what we were trying to drive at in our last few meetings. So I'm happy with leaving it just like it is and sending it forward. I mean, if staff can just block out the headers and send out that under the heading of things we would like the City Commission to consider.
Member Crow, do you have any comments on that? Sending it to the City Commission as it is now, or with?
Well, we don't have a chance to come back and vote on any changes, so that's the point.
That's true.
Send it out. Yeah, so that was kind of my sticking point on where to go with that tonight, because we didn't have a chance. But again, if we just send that off as a draft and say this is where we're starting from, and this is our opinion right now, it always is up to the city to modify anything we send forward, so it makes little difference there. But it does move the ball forward if we just send it as is, as a draft.
Well, I agree with that. We all know that Ed Belarski has pointed out some real shortcomings of some of the original work that I had drafted, and of course that needs to be changed. Also, in looking at what Jason had, I had some comments tonight, but as long as we're talking about a draft, I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity over coming months to keep refining these things and getting tighter and tighter. So it's not critical that we have everything just with all the I's properly dotted and all the T's properly crossed tonight.
Right. And that would come under the heading for staff as being talking points for discussion of the IRP and our common workshop with the city commission.
But we will need to get back to those and try to make sure that they read properly.
Yeah. Well, they'll read differently after the city gets done with them too. So they'll read properly 3 or 4 times from now. Yeah.
While we're talking about this, Mr. Chair, if I may, just for clarification.
Yeah, go ahead.
Member Crowe, some of the documents that were included in tonight's backup were intended for the IRP as well as background materials. So my comments from
The masked man was not easily understood there. Try that again.
So some of the materials that were provided in our backup materials tonight, or ones that I provided that I didn't want to include at the last meeting, but they were for you for consideration for inclusion in the IRP. Comments that I had made at a previous meeting and backup materials.
Well, we can use those. I actually drafted 2 documents, one in paragraph form and one in outline PowerPoint form. Both saying essentially the same recommendations.
Okay.
But I had some comments on what Jason had, not disagreements exactly, but just some comments. Let me just sort of read them quickly. I know it's getting very late, and of course, it's a lot easier to see something projected rather than listen to it. But just for briefly, we can get into these later. But just in his recommendation number 1, he calls for a self-rating from GRU based on the same metrics as used in the ACEEE report. Well, I wrote, in addition, we need a more all-inclusive report from GRU detailing the number of home and commercial energy audits conducted by GRU in the past 10 years and projected energy savings per audit, and an explanation of how GRU came up with a figure of 220 gigawatt hours saved and a peak demand lowered of 43 megawatts. I haven't seen any calculations that generate those numbers. And then recommendation number 2 reads, the UAB would like to request that the City Commission reevaluate its position with respect to GRU-sponsored and funded DSM programs. In other words, demand-side management. And I write, to reevaluate, quote unquote, we need to know what the position of GRU is. The UAB needs to have GRU state clearly its position and budgeted program size of its DSM programs. And then thirdly, recommendation number 3 reads, it mentions the current quote unquote tailpipe emissions of GRU facilities. And what I wrote was, what is the current level of tailpipe emissions? We need a report from GRU stating clearly the level of emissions from GRU generating facilities, including, CO2, NOx, SOx, particulates by year, by station for the last 10 years, and projected levels of pollution from each of the alternative scenarios that currently are in the IRP. All that information is lacking, and it's not even in the 10-year site plan. So I think we have grounds for additional discussion and elaboration on some of these points over time in coming months.
Thank you, Member Crowe. Again, that if I can summarize, that's additional information that will lead us to decisions in the future, but it doesn't materially change the direction of the request of those bulleted items. So trying to move something on tonight, I don't want to get into hallway editing. So it would probably run into and again, we can look into some of that detail exists right now. It just wasn't in the original or in the IRP. I know we get a summary of the pollution rates from the main levels of pollutants from all of the GRU power plants in our State of the Union report. So again, that information does exist. So any other discussion on the floor for tonight's objectives?
So as I understand it, the notion that I made would be the 7 points that Jason mentioned, well, 6 points plus 1 question.
7 points with 1 question.
And that with the understanding the question may be a moot one by the time we get to our joint meeting.
It's still on the board because it's going to be hashed out. So even though it seemed like a temporary moot, but it's still going to be there.
And that we are going to tell the city commissioners that we are working on our proposed request revisions to the IRP, and that member Crow is taking the lead on that.
Yeah.
That's my motion.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that motion and a second? Any public comment out there before we take a vote?
No, sir, there sure isn't.
All right, and thanks for hanging on there.
Sure.
All right, Robin, if you'll take the roll call on that, I'd certainly appreciate it.
Member Wheeler,
Aye.
Member Jacobson,
Aye.
Member Rockwell,
Aye.
Member Crow,
Aye.
Member Fultz,
Aye.
and Chair Porter.
Aye.
That motion passes.
All right. That leads us to the end of the meeting, but geez, I keep doing that. General Manager Bilarski would like to tell us the news of the GFT.
Oh, Mr. Chair, one more thing before we get away from that. I just want to say my thanks to Member Fultz and to Member Crow for all the work you're doing on these things that we're providing to the City Council. Thank you.
Yeah, I second that, absolutely. We don't have to vote on that. I think we all
No.
agree on that. Yeah. All right, back to you, Ed.
Yeah, sure. No, I just wanted to fill you in, give you a little bit more of a flavor of the GFT discussion today. The City Commission did decide to set the level for fiscal year 22. I always get them mixed up. Fiscal year 22, I think it is, at the $36.3 million, as opposed to the $27 million that we were requesting. I think what you need to understand with that is that it was somewhat disappointing on several levels for GRU, in that we were hoping that we would agree to some type of formula that would go out more years instead of doing a year-by-year blessing of the GFT, because
You can't plan.
yeah, you can't plan, and quite frankly, the rating agencies will look at this as a certain amount of uncertainty that will pressure them again to, having a ratings downgrade. And I understand that future commissions don't want, or commissions don't want to hold future commissions to decisions, but there is an element of future business planning. We do things that are multi-year all the time. And I was hoping that there would be a consensus to have something that came out of the consultant's report, albeit fairly flawed. They had put in an option 10 that supported the 27 million along with a calculation. So there was a certain deferral of that decision, which I think will be a negative sign to the rating agencies in that regard. But more importantly, I think we made it really clear at the meeting, as well as several meetings, and we've been kind of on a campaign over the past couple of years to alert people to the financial crossroads that we're at. And, I think the longer that time goes on, the more people, say, well, it's really not a problem. But what we needed to have was some certainty in terms of rates. We made it pretty clear that if we didn't get the 27 million, if they picked 36 million, you'd be looking at a 7% electric rate increase and a 5% wastewater rate increase to keep us whole. And through the discussion, there was a great aversion. And look, I get it. The city commission doesn't want to opine on rates prior to the final budget. But ostensibly what happened today was, think of us as a business, GRU Incorporated, although we're not a business that way. We had our governing board decide that we will be making $36 million in profit in fiscal year 22, which is somewhere on the order of a 15 or 16% return on investment. And we will need to make that up in additional revenues and or additional expense reductions. And the city commission was not supportive, in their discussions about getting to that 7 and 5% increase. So we do believe that we will have substantial expense reductions into that next fiscal year, which it's difficult to consider expense reductions when you're trying to implement new customer information system software, as well as advanced metering infrastructure software, as well as the conversion of DH2 and finishing up Kelly. So the meat of it is the only place reductions can occur is in people, because the other things are already accounted for in chemicals, hard assets, and those types of things. So we're entering this budgetary period of time in a very tenuous position. And I just wanted to relay that to the UAB, and that, if you feel some pushback and you hear some things, it's because I have Claudia and her group looking right now as to how we make up that $9 million or so out of expenses. And as you know, that's a substantial amount of money across an organization where we're at about $145 million in O&M expenses. And, a lot of that is labor, and there's expenses that we're incurring that you can't tell a contractor to accept less money in doing his work.
Yeah.
So that's the headwinds that we're facing as a result of this meeting today on the GFT.
Well, thanks for your summary, Ed. I didn't think the news would be that grim, but yeah. Okay, any comments from the floor? I won't trust myself to make any further comments. Member Foltz?
When you say comments from the floor, do you mean in response to the general manager, or do you mean that we're on to the member comment section of the meeting?
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Jason. See how you'll be a much better chair eventually than me, because you remember that kind of stuff.
Only because I have something I want to say.
It's getting late, and we all have to cogitate, and that's my favorite word tonight. I think it's the third time I've used it. That's a favorite of my dad's, about what General Manager Belowski just told us. So let's move on to member comments, and we'll start it off with Member Foltz.
I'll keep this brief. We just received today a communication from citizen Nancy Darren, and I don't know, folks probably haven't had a chance to see it yet. I met with Nancy a few days ago, and we talked about a range of issues. But one of the things that I think is most time sensitive that I wanted to make sure and just ask whether it's on our radar, she has spoken to numerous city commissioners and former UAB members in the past who found active engagement with the APPA, American Public Power Association, to be very beneficial to them. And they have a national conference that's coming up, and it's actually just going to be a few hours down the road from us, June 20th through the 23rd in Orlando, and then also July 13th through the 24th virtually. And so I at least wanted to make sure that was on everybody's radar, and to see if there was going to be any future discussion about participation in that conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Foltz. I'll pass that. I think our staff liaison, Robin, heard that. So again, we usually sent people there. I know with the budget as it is, I don't know how that's going to turn out, but if you could maybe send an email out to us if there's any news on that, we'd certainly appreciate that.
Yes, I will.
All right, thanks. Any other member comments from the floor or elsewhere?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Member Wheeler.
Jason stole some of my thunder. Nancy sent out a very nice 2-page document to us today. I'd like to have those included as background to the minutes of this meeting for our next meeting, so that they're on the public record. And I understand General Manager Bolarski's difficult position. He really is in a predicament. And I'd like for us to work on ways that not only cut expenses, but to look to increasing revenues if we can through EVs, other electrification efforts in the next year or so, to try and balance out some of the pain from the cuts.
All right. Thank you, Member Wheeler. And could I impose upon you to send a copy of that letter from Nancy to Robin, and so she could include it in the documents?
I will, but I believe it was sent to all commission members and staff, but I'll go ahead and forward it to her.
Okay. Yeah, I know, but as tendency, somebody always thinks somebody else is going to do it. So I thought I'd dump it on you, Wes. Thanks.
You know, that could have some real significance for that Rolls Royce that we promised Ed Bolarski.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Any other comments for, no, Ed, we don't need a comment on that. Any other comments from the floor?
A round of applause for Wendell Porter for doing a hell of a job as the chair in the last year.
Well, thank you all. Again, I feel very strongly about this city and this utility. Hope people that I've disagreed with in the past recognize that I still want to move things forward, but again, I do it with a lot of intensity and hopefully did move the needle forward. So again, I think that's it for tonight. I didn't hear any other comments, but thank you all for attending and hanging on for a long meeting. And Ed, please pass on to Tony. I always like hearing the water and wastewater people speak. They do such a fine job. So Ed, please pass that along to staff.
Got it.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good night. We'll see you at the next meeting.